So hello, everybody. I see here familiar names and some faces. I'm very happy and I'm glad that today's seminar will be dedicated to some challenging and edgy work on cryptocurrencies. And our guest speaker is actually, I'm announcing now a future permanent fellow of the Center for Advanced Studies, Željko Ivanković. And just briefly, because you had the opportunity to read Željko's ID, which is that Željko is an author, publisher, manager, university lecturer, and former diplomat. Croatian diplomat having significant international experience, and actually Željko was the economic counselor at the embassy of Croatia in Tokyo and in Australia, because in earlier career he actually got the PhD degree from the Australian National University. I will not keep any longer introducing Željko, because I think that the best way to get to know his work and himself is to hear his presentation. Željko, please, the floor is yours, or the Zoom is yours. You will have 40 to 45 minutes to present your talk, and I'm certain that it will be inspiring for our fellows to ask you questions and to engage into a discussion afterwards. Thank you very much for joining us from Zagreb.
Thank you, Sanja. I'm really pleased for the opportunity to share with you my recent, in fact, research interest. It is still not completed. It is for the discussion. So I would like to thank people from Center for Advanced Studies and University of Rijeka for the invitation. And I hope that my presentation will open the door for our further fruitful cooperation. I hope for lively discussion after the presentation and for new ideas for our further research. I hope together come further research. The subject of my presentation today is the relationship between money and technology. My interest in the concept of money, not in the earning of money, began a few decades ago, when, although a philosopher by training, I became an editor of a financial magazine and realized that discussion among economists about the nature and origins of money are colored by their political and economic ideology, commitments, and social values. Later on, I came to the conclusion that nothing is wrong with their biases. Economic theories are not only mirrors of economic activities, they are at the same time components of social and political life. They affect it intentionally or unintentionally. They contain the concept of justice that their authors prefer, which is often affected by the circumstances and problems which economists confront and try to solve. Economics belongs to practical knowledge. Sometimes economics and finance look as if they are a kind of engineering science. They use tools to achieve particular goals. Therefore, the theories about the origins and the nature of money are intertwined with solutions which economists propose to a problem in front of them. They look for equivalent historical circumstances and conditions. They investigate what went wrong, what might have been done better, which outcome was good, and why. Economists, for example, disagree about the beginnings of central banking. central banks fulfill a number of purposes. They are the lenders of last resort. They control prices and value of money. They stabilize financial markets and they control the banking system. Central banks provide financial resources for governments. There are countries where central banks take responsibility not only for the financial system, but also for the employment rate and entire economic activity. As a consequence, some economists date the beginning of central banking at the end of 18th century in England, while others think that the central banking began at the beginning of 17th century in Amsterdam. It is possible to find traces of central banking in public banking in the cities of Renaissance Italy, although only the 20th century is really the century of central banking. Bank of England at the beginning primarily financed the government. Bank of Amsterdam stabilized the money market. Italian Citibank stabilized banking. The example of central banking illustrates why economists disagree about the origins and nature of money and why it is a never-ending discussion, because they disagree about an appropriate and just role of money, and money system. I will today speak about digital currencies, what problems they promise to solve, what opportunities they open, what distinguishes them from traditional currencies. At first sight, it seems obvious that their differentia specifica is technology. According to the proponents of technological progress, if technology is employed as a solution for particular problems, it opens possibility to avoid arbitrary decisions of humans. In the case of money creation, which is a function of central banks, cryptocurrencies introduced an automated creation of money units, a regular rhythm of creation of a limited number of new units known to all market participants and determined in advance. For example, new bitcoins are created roughly every 10 minutes, and the total number of 21 million units will be reached in 120 years. You can see it here. Bitcoin was invented in 2008. Its approach to money creation is often explained as a reaction to arbitrary decisions of central banks around the world when they faced the great financial crisis 12 years ago. And many central banks decided for an excessive creation of and allocation of money to selected recipients, mostly governments and banks. Sorry. Croatian Central Bank allocated money to the government to avoid the chaos of its bankruptcy. And the US government, Federal Reserve and government, allocated money to big banks to overcome their bankruptcy. EU decided to confront Greece with bankruptcy. Different economic engineers decided what they considered appropriate for economic activity, but also what they considered to be just and fair. Australian government borrowed a huge sum from its central bank and distributed it to 10 million of its citizens, lower half a population, to support their purchasing power and avoid an economic crisis. It is possible to argue that the technology of automated creation of money is not value neutral, but value laden. An automated creation of scarce currency units in limited time frame is seen by some people as an exposure to excessive risk, which favors those who are lucky and wealthy, therefore unfair, particularly if compared with the decision of Australian government to help a poorer half of the population. Following this interpretation, the algorithm is unnecessarily deprived of the possibility to help in crisis. Still, if people trying to avoid arbitrary decision of money engineers to whom they also don't trust, accepted an automated creation of money before the crisis, the conclusion that the algorithm is unfair seems wrong. If people accepted the conclusion that algorithm is unfair seems wrong. Algorithm is simply blind. This is the basic position of those who advocate value neutrality of technology. Value is not embedded in an instrument, a tool, since it can be used for good or bad purposes, depending on people's decisions. Value neutrality of technology is almost common sense. It looks unbeatable. People who are mad at or angry at technology look as if they lost control of themselves. Nevertheless, the criticism of technology from a moral position is not sporadic among scholars. The literature is huge, and there are senseless and pathetic examples of that literature, as well as honest and convincing analysis of the relationship between technology and morality. Here, I would like to recommend Sheila Jasanoff's book, Ethics of Invention. Jasanoff doesn't generalize without reason and observes large numbers of examples, of which I will mention two. First is an example of a crossing which was initially without a street light. However, later on, the street light was added. Before the street light was placed, pedestrians crossed the street at their own responsibility. Drivers were also careful and cautious. Later, pedestrians would sometimes get annoyed if the red light was on with no cars in sight for a long time, and frequently ended up jaywalking. They tried to cross the street while the red light was on, and drivers didn't expect it. There was the possibility, and there are some statistics, that some crossings with street light was more dangerous than the same crossing without them. However, nobody can blame traffic regulation if people don't follow the rule. Still, the difference in allocation of responsibility between two cases before street light and after street light was posted, the difference is allocation of responsibility is to be emphasized here. Street light is a benign example. Think about the doctors who avoid responsibility and transfer it on diagnostic instrument. The second example is the tragedy of Challenger spacecraft from 1986. Jasanoff again discusses the allocation of responsibilities in such a case, particularly in the relationship to the concept of unintended consequences. She asks, does it mean that the designer's original intent was not executed as planned, or that things happened outside the scope of their intent because no one could have known in advance how the technology would be used? In the case of technology, unintended consequences, unintended consequences are always negative, emphasizes Jasanoff, as if always were planned only positive outcomes. But that is the question. What happened? Was the mistake made in the execution? Maybe the error was in the design. Was the possibility of mistake in execution not taken into account by error, or it was assumed but not prevented, like a doctor who transferred it to what happened will happen. Que sera, sera. Maybe the wrong tools was chosen for the planned goal. Jasanoff analyzes in details the discussion after the tragedy. Again, the choice of technology included the decisions about the allocation of responsibility. And sometimes in advance, some people tried to avoid responsibility for risk, for possible risk. Scholars who research technology are unanimous that the concept of technology as such is complex, even confusing. We live in the age of technology, but we cannot provide a simple and clear definition of it. Still, I would say that in regard to Jasanoff's two examples, we can try to distinguish the technology as a tool and the technology as an engineering system. This distinction is not always easy to make. However, I do it in regard to money. I distinguish the money system run by engineers and money as a tool and various technical solutions for money, like metal coins, paper money, book money, bank money, digital money in the end. Earlier mentioned examples show that the management of money system includes both the possibility of unintended consequences and discussion on allocation of responsibility for them, very much alike to the Challenger case. Engineers of monetary system often blame people for not behaving as it was ordered or expected. There is monetary theory. The design of the monetary system is often based on a monetary theory. The management, and theory is limited always, the management of the system follows theory and other norms, and there are tools. However, I know that banknotes, coins, and book money are not the only tools of money engineers. There are interest rates, exchange rates, and so on. Here, in regard to the digital money, because I will speak about digital currencies, I will try to show that the choice of tools is value-laden, that the choice of technical solution includes moral choice. If you choose between cash and banknotes, you make a moral decision. Similar to Jasanoff's examples of street lights and Challenger, money is always about the allocation of responsibility at the level of the system, which is easier to see, but also at the level of choice of an instrument. Actually, when European Court of Justice decided in the well-known Hedquist case from 2015, yes, I put it, that Bitcoin was money, it decided about the allocation of responsibility among parties in the transaction. The question was whether Bitcoin was money or a good or an asset, meaning financial instrument, like, for example, in the crisis in the United States, collateral debt obligations and other similar derivatives and similar instruments. If it was a good or a financial instrument, VAT is to be paid. This initiated that case. But more importantly, VAT initiated that case, value-added tax. The seller is responsible for its quality, for quality of good or for quality of financial instrument. Money is exchanged in contrast to a good or financial instrument. Money is exchanged as its face value. I would like to mention that in the opinion published a few years ago, Croatian Central Bank and the Ministry of Finance decided I believe for tax reason, that Bitcoin was a financial asset. Since Croatia legalized crypto exchanges of money, like Bitcoin for euro and so on, recently, I'm not sure whether they still consider cryptocurrencies financial instrument and not money. The situation was similar to the acceptance of banknotes as money proper centuries ago. It was similar situation because banknotes were initially considered only tokens of money. For pure utilitarian reasons, bankers decided to take over responsibility for banknotes from customers when they use when that use of notes spread, become common. So bankers took over responsibility for banknotes. This is again allocation. It was in their profit interest. But again, it was the allocation of responsibility among parties in the transactions. In transactions. Now I will explain how cryptocurrencies work and then analyze whether moral choice was embedded in their design. Comparison with other money technologies, metal coins, paper money, book money, bank money, is the easiest way to do it, to find whether moral choices are embedded. So Bitcoin was invented, this is the first page of that famous paper. Bitcoin was invented in 2008 by famous, and nobody knows who he was, Satoshi Nakamoto, as a solution for the so-called double spending problem. Double spending is impossible with coins or paper money. If you pay for groceries, you transfer coins to the seller, and you cannot purchase a book or something other with the same coins anymore. However, when you come to a bank to pay an electricity bill, the clerk verifies whether you have enough money for the payment, then credits the power supply company for the amount which is subtracted from your bank account. The idea of Nakamoto and his predecessors was to create an electronic payment, no cash payment, but electronic payment system without the so-called third party, without that clerk, which executes transactions. In my bank example, the third party is the bank clerk, but the third party is also in credit card company and so on. So, however, the problem of possible double spending emerges. If there is no third party, what or who will prevent somebody from sending a message through the electronic payment system that he pays an electricity bill nonetheless he doesn't have enough money or the account on the account, or the money was already spent on rent, groceries, books, or whatever. Nakamoto's solution was as follows. The sender of money sends information on payment to the network, to all its members. Cryptography ensures that only the recipient gets the money. At the same time, some members of the network, so-called miners, decrypt whether the sender had enough money on his account for sending it to the recipient. The miner who as first successfully decrypts the transaction as valid sends this information to other miners. They then easily confirm validity of transaction. The miner who by luck decrypted the transaction is awarded by bitcoins. At the same time, the transaction is recorded in the ledger of transactions, which is also visible to everyone. This is brief description, but I don't have enough time to go into details. In fact, transactions are before verification packed in blocks, and when confirmed, added to the chain of previously verified blocks. Therefore, it is called blockchain. However, for our analysis, it is more important that the verification of transactions is decentralized, miners, a bunch of miners. The creation of new money units is automated. As I mentioned, every 10 minutes, new money units come into the system, and the ledger of transactions is distributed to all members, not only to miners, but to all. This is why the blockchain technology in the legislative of European Union, and there are a lot of material in the European Union, it is now called DLT, a distributed ledger technology. Distributed, decentralized, and automated. It looks very democratic. In contrast to the system of banking electronic payment, there is no third party which checks and confirms transactions, and to which the sender and the recipient of money should trust that the transaction is valid. The proponents of blockchain technology emphasize that this is a trustless technology. They call it trustless, somehow beyond good and evil. It is valuable only because it can be used for good or for bad cause. The choice between these two possibilities is not on the technology, the instrument, the tool, which is therefore considered neutral. This is the key argument of the proponents of value neutrality of technology. The man kills, not the rifles. Nakamoto is in his seminal paper mentioned the problem of trust several times, and even today people from the crypto world emphasize the tendency to minimize trust in their relationship in money transactions. They often emphasize that there is no third party to trust her or to blame her if something goes wrong. Nobody but parties in transactions are responsible for the transaction and their relationship. Some interpreters concluded that instead of trust, only the confidence in the machine, in algorithm is needed. So they distinguish trust and confidence like in car. As for the purpose of further analysis, additional features of the DLT blockchain are to be noted. Since the information about the transaction is distributed to all the members of the network, they are anonymous. Nobody knows who is behind the node which sent money or who the receiver is. Privacy of parties in the transaction is protected. The second feature is the irreversibility of transactions. This is very important feature. Irreversibility of transactions. Since verification of transactions require consensus of miners, once when it is reached consensus, the transaction is irreversible. You need for new transaction, new consensus. Firstly, I would like to comment on anonymity and privacy. However, I distinguish anonymity and privacy. Anonymity is a kind of nature of money from Roman times. When jurists explain how money was described in the Roman law, they often begin with the borrowing of goods or assets. If a horse or a house was borrowed, the duty of the borrower is to return the same house or horse, and in the same condition. If wheat or grain is borrowed, the same quantity and quality is to be returned, but not the same grain, of course. This is fungibility, which is also a feature of money. However, there is a distinction between payment with grain and payment with money. If the grain was stolen, the party in the transaction which received it, that stolen grain, should return it, as opposed to the payment with money. Payment with money is final. If somebody buys a good in the shop with the stolen money, if some criminal buys a good in the shop with the stolen money, there is no responsibility of the shop owner to return the money. Criminals are allowed to use money. All of that is reflected in the well-known legal description of money from the end of 19th century. Money passes freely from hand to hand throughout the community, in our case it is network, in final discharge of debts, being accepted equally, without reference to the character or credit of the person who offers it, and without the intention of the person who received it to consume it. Words without reference to the character or credit of the person who offers it are related to the anonymity of money. Everybody is allowed to use currency without reference to the character of the person who offers it. It was interesting how the question of anonymity reappeared when Facebook announced the project of creation of Libra, its own currency. At the same time, a right-wing activist, Alex Jones, and yesterday I heard Donald Trump also, was banned from posting on the network. It implies that the Libra wouldn't fulfill that Facebook money, Facebook currency, wouldn't fulfill criteria to be money in a sense of the above description, which is created after money, embodied in coins and notes. This is the description of coins and notes, in fact, from the end of 19th century. Even today, proponents and opponents advocate abandoning or retaining of cash, metal coins, and paper money in regard to privacy. The proponents emphasize protection of privacy, while opponents warn about misuse of anonymity for illegal activity. However, bank money is not anonymous, although banks used to promise protection of privacy to their clients. Today, even the privacy of bank money is in the process of redefinition and transformation. As for cryptocurrencies, the anonymity is in line with their technical solution. Information of transaction is sent to all members of the network, therefore anonymity. The payer and the payee don't want everybody to know about their transaction. Bitcoin network is permissionless. Everybody is allowed to access it, even criminals. However, there are permission blockchains where not everybody is allowed and members are not anonymous. The choice of technology is value-laden. However, in the case of privacy, this is a trivial conclusion. The intention of Nakamoto's blockchain, or peer-to-peer electronic cash system, as he calls it, is to be an alternative to bank money. Therefore, its key feature is that there is no trusted third party who controls and verifies transactions, but a trustless mechanism. Before the analysis how this solution is also value-laden, I would like to comment some other elements of the previous legal description of money. It is not expected for money to be consumed implicitly. If it is not expected to be consumed implicitly, the only alternative use of money is to pass freely, if you remember from the definition, to pass freely. That is to be subsequently exchanged for goods or assets. This is called convertibility of money. It assumes that money transfers value, although the material from which money is made is almost worthless. It is interesting to compare money as measure with other measures. We usually ask for 1 kilo of sugar, half a liter of beer, but we borrow 100 euros of euros, as if it is not a measure of value of something, but contains value in itself, and measure value of goods with the relative to the measure in money, somehow embodied in money. We usually use it. It is a language problem, I think, in that sense. So therefore, it is exchange according to its face value, and payment with money is considered final discharge of debt. At first sight, this is similar to the blockchain's irreversibility of payment, final discharge. It is final. Nakamoto compares it to bank money, where the famous trusted third party can cancel payment or reverse it from the account of the recipient. Although the non-reversibility of payment was in fact a consequence of the consensus mechanism. Nakamoto's argument for it was to protect the seller. Simple escrow mechanism, it is not necessarily to explain it, writes Nakamoto, protects the buyer, since the transaction can be executed when he, buyer, receives a good of appropriate quality. According to Nakamoto, irreversibility of payment protects sellers from fraud. For the beginning, although irreversibility is in fact a consequence of technical solution, Nakamoto's argument is from the area of values, ethics, to protect seller from fraud. However, the irreversibility of transactions doesn't protect sellers. It is clear from the use of Bitcoin on the black market. Sellers and buyers invented additional mechanisms to protect themselves. Sellers follow buyers. It is possible on internet or on blockchain. Sellers follow buyers on platforms, assess their accuracy of payment and exchange among themselves. Sellers exchange among themselves information about the responsibility of buyers. They, in fact, invented a reputation system appropriate for the black market. And again, I will mention an example from the history of money. Only when and only if seller recognizes responsibility of bank for payment and transfers and accepts the transfer of responsibility from for payment from buyer to the bank, the money deposited in safe became bank money. I distinguish bank money and bank notes. So what I emphasize here, that again, an allocation of responsibility was made to create bank money, one new type of money. The analysis of cryptocurrencies by Katarina Pistor in her book, The Code of Capital, also emphasized that the transaction is more than just sending money. I mentioned Pistor because my analysis relies much on a relatively new approach to the understanding of money, which looks on money more as a legal, or better to say, an institutional creation than as an economic creation. The new legal theory of money is affirmed by scholars like Christine Desan, Katharina Pistor, Wolfgang Ernest, David Fox, Benjamin Jiva, Roy Kreitner, and others. Back to the verification of transactions and to the double spending problems. If one compares various technical solutions for verification of transactions, besides their characteristics like efficiency and spending of energy, it is possible to assess them from the point of the distribution of power, which is again an ethical analysis. In different technical solutions like proof of work, proof of stake, proof of space, they include the distribution of rights and capacities for verification of transactions. For example, verifications of transactions. Transactions of book money in Renaissance Italy were verified by powerful and trusted citizens as witnesses. Now we have in the technology some who have a right, depending on their energy consumptions, volume of space on their hard disk, or how much they have coins. They have rights and power to verify transactions. And I have now about how much monopolized are two main networks, Bitcoin networks and Ethereum network. Ethereum is very popular nowadays. And according to the recent analysis, 10 of addresses, 10 largest addresses control 53% of Ethereum currency. So it is very monopolized. And of course, one can consider strong concentration as bad or as good. Concentration to some degree guarantees stability because big users will try to protect their assets from decrease in value. However, if they themselves don't initiate a drop of prices. And this is my final slide. I will end my talk here. I tried to show that money is not only an economic creation, but also a moral creation, and that the selection of money instrument is also a moral choice, not only at the level of the tool, but at the level, actually, not only at the level of money system, which is easier to accept, but also at the level of the tool. Contrary to possible intentions of creators of cryptocurrencies and their proponents. My final slide notes some scholars who develop institutional, I mentioned them earlier, who develop institutional and legal theory of money, and shows the book of Christina Pastor, which I mentioned earlier. Thank you. I hope for the, and it was, I think, 40 minutes. I'm on time.
Thank you very much. I would like to open the floor for questions. I have some applause. Tanya, can you, I'm sorry, Željko, could you please just stop sharing so that I can see?
Yeah. I forgot.
Thanks very much. Okay, Tanya.
Hello, everybody.
Have the floor.
Hi, thank you so much for this. This is a very interesting presentation.
I can see you.
And it's one of those things that I think many of us. Huh?
No, I have some problem with internet connection, but okay, I can hear you now.
Okay. I think Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are something we all hear a lot about, but often have very little exposure to. But within this sort of recent history of Bitcoin splitting and then really in value going up exponentially now to, I think, beyond 50,000 US dollars per Bitcoin.
55, yeah.
Yeah, that's like in 2 months. So I'm wondering whether we can really even consider it a money at this point, in that it's something that is just purely exchanged and not a commodity itself. Because going from its early days of like, okay, you know, use it to buy things that maybe you shouldn't be legally able to buy, or in general exchange. Now it's being purchased exclusively for its rising value. And I wonder if that can be, if you have comments on that.
Yes, it is not used. I think it is not used anymore for transaction groceries, of course. Maybe in some how they call that chain of cafes, Starbucks. So in some Starbucks where geeks gather and discuss future development of cryptocurrencies or technologies. But yes, I think it happened because this is interesting history of cryptocurrencies. Actually, it happened because there are always increase and a sudden drop in price of Bitcoin in 2010, 2011, 2013, 2017, and now we have a very steep increase in the price of Bitcoin. So I can explain, for example, for 2013, one of explanation were Russian oligarchs who tried to save their money stuck in Cyprian banks. So they transferred it in Bitcoin. That affected the price of. This is one of explanations. There are other explanations. Then that demand increased the price of Bitcoin, and then they finished. After they finished their operation, the collapsed. The price of Bitcoin collapsed. So in 2017, other explanations. Some I would say price manipulation. It was price manipulation for profit reason. And today, what happened today? So banking sector continuously through the history, it is short history, 10 years, attacked cryptocurrencies. And then suddenly they decided, because some people became rich with the trading of crypto, suddenly they decided that, for example, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, to offer to their wealthy clients possibility to, because they manage wealth of some clients, it is wealth management in banking sector, open them possibility to invest part of their wealth in cryptocurrencies. So this is completely legal, of course, or at least it is not illegal. Okay, and so this is why demand affected the increase of prices. Then MasterCard and Visa, PayPal also offered possibility to transfer, in fact, not payment, because nobody pays anymore with Bitcoin, but transfer of large sum of money. In fact, they promised they will until the end of this year open that possibility. So all of that affected the increase of prices of cryptocurrencies. This was your question, or you need more details? I mentioned in the history some large players in fact affected the increase and sometimes sudden drop of prices. So, and now I can see only big banks and big companies who announced, okay, we will consider to manage something, to do something with cryptocurrencies. This is, I think, the main reason for, and of course there are some other reasons, but these are side reasons, side explanations.
Yeah, I suppose the question is then, can it really be distinguished from a commodity as opposed to money? Or has it just become a commodity?
Okay,
now?
that was your first question. Okay, so this is now used for investment. Now it is used for investment, but I don't think nobody takes and of course money like dollar, euro also can be used for investment, actually for savings, but it is still money because of face value, what I mentioned earlier. It is accepted at face value. Financial instrument is not accepted by face value because you can accuse later on when you discover that financial instrument CDO, for example, credit debt obligation, which which influenced the financial crisis in 2008. You can accuse, for example, rating agency for giving them AAA, like safe financial instruments, or you can accuse seller that he didn't discover all characteristics or features of that instrument. But you cannot accuse anybody for Bitcoin or for dollar. If you invest, for example, if you save $2 million, because it is accepted in the community as understandable, as common. Yes, sometimes people in some shops, in the case of high inflation, in some shops, people don't accept dinner from Yugoslavia, or I don't know which the currency with high inflation. But it is also understandable, and it is not money anymore. It is just paper, and you cannot buy with it anything. It is not money in if we speak about categories. But of course, categories are not very definite in the world of money, and also and in social world, and finance, I think, is a social science. So this is yes, Bitcoin is used as an investment instrument, not for transaction. I agree with you, but it is still used as a financial instrument as money. Not no, it is still used as money for saving, not as for example, shares or bonds or collateral debt obligations. There is a difference between them. And I don't know, maybe they will develop in some, it is not carved in stone. I'm speaking now, I compare banknotes several hundred years ago and some decisions today, but what will happen? It is developing world. I don't know. Okay, next, if you have next. Gabriele Giacomini.
Thank you very much for your very interesting talk. You described a central bank decision as arbitrary. You choose this word. But for example, Keynes, John Maynard Keynes, explained that central banks and also government must arbitrarily inject money, create put money into the economic system during, for example, a big crisis in order to overcome the crisis. So arbitrary decisions sometimes are necessary and also good, I think. For example, when individuals are saving money during the COVID recession, a lot of people is saving a lot of money. it is necessary to do contrary action, and only institutions can do contrary action because the recession is making worse by the decentralized behavior of individuals. So my concern is that the automatic creation of money and neutrality could be maybe a problem in case of recession. What do you think? It is possible to stop recession with Bitcoin, with decentralized cryptocurrencies, within in a peer-to-peer electronic system?
I think I answered. Maybe I wasn't clear enough, but I answered it in my speech that from some point of view, cryptocurrencies are, I compare it with the Australian government. In my opinion, Australian government took the right path. They decided to print money to overcome recession, but they didn't allocate it to banks or governments, but to people. So this is clear example that in the case of recession, yes, it is better to print money. Why don't print money in the you know, there is a problem. Arbitrary is to print money or to issue money, to create money and allocate it to banks, to government, or to people. It depends also on circumstances. Yes, I agree, and I mentioned that that cryptocurrencies are not fair in comparison to and not just in comparison to those arbitrary decisions, to some of those arbitrary decisions. And it is not possible in my cryptocurrencies with automated production of new units are deprived of the possibility to change their policy in the circumstances of crisis, and to change their policy and to overcome crisis. Deprived of, and also it is, I mentioned, people are exposed to excessive risk in the case of cryptocurrencies. So maybe I wasn't clear enough, but that automated from some point of view.
Yes, but my concern is that if people are saving money during a recession, and the government give directly to people other money, the people continue to save money.
Yeah, that's happened.
And this is a problem.
Yes, this is a problem. This is completely different problem than the problem with cryptocurrencies. For example, in this COVID crisis, people, many governments decided to create money and to give that money directly to people in the United States, in Croatia, and in some other countries. And what people did with that money? They purchased Bitcoins. So partly explanation of the increase of the price of Bitcoins is that money which is given for helping for unemployed. You know, so they purchased shares in some funds, and these funds invested in Bitcoins. This is not. I don't think there is the solution carved in stone. You are on wild water with money, and you manage. You know, sometimes you have one problem, another time you have another problem. So, and management, of course, what Australian government did 10 years ago and now, and avoid recession. So now many governments do, but what people do? people invest in Bitcoins directly or indirectly, and I don't think it is profitable. I don't think it helps economy. I don't think even it helps people.
We have a question from Marin Berush.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Marin. I come from Pula. My question is not so much connected with the economy, but let's just say probably with sociology. Money so far, well, let me just explain my angle. I'm coming from theory of cosmopolitanism, and my interest in cryptocurrencies is in that fact that cryptocurrencies are not nationally bounded, they are not territorially bounded, they are sort of a proto-cosmopolitan currency, at least in that regard. But money so far has also been a symbol of identity, of national identity. And my interest is, well, I'm just trying to pick your thoughts on that. Can cryptocurrency also present some sort of new symbol of identity for people who are no longer feel bounded with the national identities? Can you, at least from that sociological aspect, explain cryptocurrencies? You explained a lot a bit on economic aspect and something about ethical aspect of money, but can you explain what will be effect of cryptocurrencies on society, on people identifying with that type of?
In regard to identity, the only identity what I find in the world of cryptocurrencies, the main identity is they call themselves libertarians. Okay, this is ideological identity, or anarcho-libertarians, or some anarcho, I don't know, anarcho something, I forgot. So, and if you look, it is not my perspective now, but even there are problems, some institutional problems with that cosmopolitanism of Bitcoins or other cryptocurrencies. You are probably aware that 2 weeks ago, Turkey banned cryptocurrency totally. So, but I don't know if Turkish people have access to yes, anarcho-capitalist. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tanya. So, okay, if people from Turkey, if citizens have access to the internet, they can, for example, look at this scenario, buy with their Bitcoins a car in Greece, okay? If it is not banned in Greece. And somebody will pay their taxes, or you know, so in fact, behind that problem with cryptocurrencies in Greece was looking from sociological perspective, and I think it is very important, the sociological perspective in sociological aspects in the world of cryptocurrencies. 2 large crypto exchanges with $2 billion collapsed after that ban in Turkey. I think it was kind of power game between the government and these people, because if they, and one of them left to Albania, if I remember correctly. So if, and it happened in around the world, that some people became really wealthy, really rich. For example, founders of Facebook, Winklevoss brothers. If you watched that movie, The Social Network, they were founders of Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg, and they invested their investment in Facebook. They invested it in Bitcoins, and they became really rich. So that. So sorry, Marin, I'm not sure I answered your question. I switched to another, to the problem of sociology of cryptocurrencies. When one of them became really rich, then starts legalization, kind of legalization of cryptocurrencies. Okay, this is second part. This is not my speech was conceptual analysis and from different points of view, from moral and from economic point of view. But there is interesting history. Cryptocurrencies are laboratory. How money can be now created, like in ancient Greece, like in Renaissance Italy, like for example, only food for thought. Libra was named after Charlemagne's Libra, which was imaginary currency, never coined, imaginary currency. So, and cryptocurrencies are also imaginary currency. There is no Bitcoin like a coin. That doesn't exist. There is only ledger of transactions, no Bitcoin. So this is imaginary. So this is interesting in several tracks you can analyze it. So from cosmopolitan back to Marian, and then Tanya will ask a question. So yes, it is interesting from your point of view as well. As you probably didn't note that Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen 2 weeks ago mentioned Tobin tax. So mentioned tax, one cosmopolitan tax, I would say. So okay, we don't know what will happen with the globalization. So okay, I
think that Marin has a follow-up question,
yes.
and then we'll have Tanya.
Oh, okay.
And who will also Tanya, and then
so Marin has a follow-up, I think, and then Tanya.
Okay.
I think.
Sorry, follow. Of course, cryptocurrency is probably the ultimate fiduciary money. But my question is just a follow-up. Thank you. Do you think that cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, etc., have a power to be more widely accepted in the general population? So only high-level capitalist society, financial institutions, etc., not as a.
I don't think so.
It will not in any moment totally push out the national, let us call it national money.
I don't think so for now, because you can find in the history of money always find one which is mainstream and private monies. Different for even today. I think I read recently that in France you have 50 types of 50 local and private currencies used for special purposes today in France. For example, in Basque in France, in Basque part of France, you have Yusko, which is widely used for national identity, Marin. For it expresses somehow, it represents some kind of national identity in Basque in France. So you always have a kind of private limited currencies in the history of money. And also it is not easy to use. This is why you have crypto exchanges. you have websites and with a possibility to buy, to save, or to sell Bitcoins. Not so many people use blockchain. Some other people use it for them. So this is not for now, maybe, of course, 15, 20 years ago or 2 years ago, it was not easy to use Zoom, maybe, or internet, or smartphone, and you always have with new functions, new variants, you have always problems. So maybe it will become common, but it is in it takes decades. If you look at, for example, banknotes, it took centuries to become money. Okay, and also other forms of book money or something like this. So it takes time, probably. So the next question.
And this isn't really a question, it's more just kind of adding to Marin's thinking through this. I also wonder, even if it were to become a sort of international or cosmopolitan currency, it nevertheless is not, like most cosmopolitanism, is not equal across. And so now we already have mining sort of moving towards a global south, where use of the currency is more in the global north. And so is that the same form of cosmopolitanism, or is it, there's work done behind it? So that's just kind of the I think, a limit to it, and also a scary ecological impact. Yeah.
Okay, it was, I just read one message in the chat. So do you have further questions? Not for now. I agree. It is possible to discuss cryptocurrencies from various, and I encourage people and other to discuss cryptocurrencies from various points of view. I think my presentation was, as I mentioned, conceptual and basic in some sense. But yes, history is very sociology of money. And politics, of course, politics. Because, for example, if you follow Christine Lagarde, so she oscillates in her relationship to cryptocurrencies. Sometimes she encourages central banks around the world. Think about it. Accept it, don't forget it. So, and then she suddenly, oh, this is very dangerous, be cautious. So no, and all the world is afraid from a cosmopolitan point of view nowadays that China experiments with digital yuan. So what will happen if I save in yuan? It will open possibility for me to maybe not to access digital yuan and then to save in yuan, because I believe in. So maybe the dollar will not anymore a reserve currency of the world. So not because of Bitcoins, but because of the development of digital. Actually, I distinguish digital currencies and cryptocurrencies. They are different. And I don't think that digital yuan, even it was promised, will be cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency is decentralized, as I mentioned. So not under control of central authority. So if Chinese central bank decided to develop digital yuan, it means, okay, it is risky. We will see what will happen with this. So. Okay, so it is.
Do we have perhaps some more questions or comments? Okay. Thank you very much, Željko, for this talk. It was extremely interesting and thought-provoking, and thank you very much for having the discussion with us. And hopefully, we'll be seeing each other more, both over Zoom and in person in Rijeka and in Cres in the near future.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope you will send me the link to
absolutely.
the presentation, and we will be in contact for further cooperation. I encourage you to think about cryptocurrencies, not only cryptocurrencies, but the world of money. I think on the level which is not only superficial, you know. So okay, because I think there are a lot of layers in the world of money. So thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.